Eruvin. Okay, we have
Aleph
Aleph
Dalet.
Dalet. Wide enough to hold an ariak, and strong enough to hold an ariak. You read view it says wide, even if it is not strong. If it was made of straw or reeds, we view it as if it were made of metal. Bent, we view it as if it was straight. Rounded, we view it as if it was squared. Anything which has a circumference of 3 fists has a diameter of 1 fist.
Right,
A
so
pole.
that's a little approximation of pi.
Oh, I don't know
A
those things.
circumference of 3, then its diameter is 1.
I don't know those things. You know this.
3.1415926. You know that number?
I know the number, but I don't know all those other things.
The
I never.
ratio, the ratio of the circumference to diameter of a circle.
All right. I never had to do those things in school. I only have like 900 degrees, but I never had to do any of those things. So
Well,
the poles.
you need 360 degrees for a circle.
That's true. The poles of which they spoke, their heights is 10 fists, while their width and thickness are of any size. Rabbi Yossi says the width is 3 fists.
Hold,
Okay.
just hold on. Have I just lost you? Where?
I'm on 6. I'm on
Oh, right.
above.
So that's Lechayain. Yes, that's right. You just okay. Right. You just did 6. Okay, good. All right. B'chol osin lechayain. You can make the post out of anything. Afilu b'davar sheyesh bo ruach chayim. So technically speaking, not that I can imagine any circumstances under which somebody would want to do this. But you could take an animal and tie it to the wall at the entrance of the alley, and that would qualify as the lechi that demarcates the opening of the alleyway. And I'm just thinking, like, why?
I think if one of the kids were bad, I might tie them up to the, like a leggy. You're staying here for
Yeah,
the day.
yeah, but that's a very big why on earth would anyone want to do something like that? But anyway, but nonetheless, it works. Okay, maybe what you could do is if you had a nice fat snake, if you caught the snake and you tied it up against the pole, and you tied it fast to the wall, it might be convenient.
Fast to get that thing to stand up straight. It really would have to be very fast.
Yeah. Okay. So it's. I think it's one of these interesting little thought experiments that we sometimes have in the Mishnah, which includes the next case. Okay, Rabbi Yossi says this. He says no, because the animal might move, or it might die and collapse over, and then you don't have the 10 tefachim that's required of the height. Okay. So Rabbi Yossi says don't do this. I don't think anyone says do this, but but technically you could manage it. Okay. Umatame mishum golel. And furthermore, a live animal, he has another let's say unwarranted use of a live animal, is using it as a covering for a grave. Right? You couldn't find a gravestone, and they said, well, here's a convenient cow. Let's just take this cow and tie it down on top of the grave for now.
Wouldn't work.
Okay. Okay, so but normally an animal, now the chiddush of this is that normally an animal is unable to contract tumah, right? A live animal.
Right.
No live animal transmits tumah, except if you've tied it down as a gravestone. Okay, in which case it contracts tumah as a gravestone. So that's what our Mishna is teaching us in terms of other weird uses of animals. The Rabbi Meir Matahir, he says never. It's a living animal, it can never become tam. Okay. Because when alav gite nashim, here's another weird use of an animal for you. Writing a woman's get on it. So, for example, inscribing the get on the horn. Mm-hmm. Okay, the Rabbi Yossi Aglili Posel. So, but in order for this to be valid, for a woman's get to be written on the horn, the man would have to give the entire animal to the woman, because if he then severed the horn to give it to her, then it wasn't then there's a technicality that it wasn't complete. It wasn't at the time of writing. It had to be with Kasavla Sefer Krisos. He has to write her a book. What's it called? A Sefer. Okay, and sorry, this is the technicality is that all that has to be done with this is writing it and giving it. It can't be that you're required to chop it off first. So so it has to be part of the animal. Rabbi Yossi clearly says no. It's got to be a sefer. It's got to be a scroll. It can't be something that's still alive. But the Tanna Kama learns it from a sefer Krisos only for the enactment. What's the word that I'm looking for? Just for the specification of the details of the get. That's the reason it's called the sefer. But it's otherwise valid on a living animal as well.
Does she just have this living animal with the horn on him, or they cut it off after he writes it?
Well, that's what everyone agrees that's possible. If they cut off the horn after he writes it, that's possible. But if he writes, but according to the Tanna Kama, if he wrote the get on the horn and then gave the whole animal to the woman, it's a valid get.
And they can't cut it off before because then it's not coming from.
Well, if he cut it off before and then wrote the get, that would be valid according to everyone.
Okay. All right.
Okay. All right. Returning to our subject of Eruvin, She'ara is a convoy. So you've got a bunch of travelers who are all going together, and they park in the valley. They set up camp inside a valley, and comes in Shabbos, and it's not so easy to put up a full-on fence when they're busy traveling. So what's their eitzah? They take all of the kalim of the animals, the saddles and the packs and the whatever they can muster together, and they pile them up in a circle around their encampment. Okay, the taltalin besocha. Then they can use that as a to designate a Rosh Yachid. It just has to be 10 tfachim high in order to make a valid partition. So this is a valid mechitza that's separated from the rest of the valley, and it's got to be 10 tfachim high. And it's got to be more built up than broken. In other words, you can have gaps in it so people can walk through it, but right. The built-up areas have got to be at least as much as the open areas. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of piles of flotsam that you've put up around your camp. It's got to look like a partition, which means at least 50% of it is partition.
There's a shear of how much that gap could be.
Very good. Very good. That's the next thing. As long as the shear, as long as the opening is up to 10 amas. 10 amas is a valid opening. That's like a doorway. If you make it bigger, if you make a gap bigger than that, then you haven't got a partition at all. Which means that even opposite the areas where it is built up, you can't carry, because this whole area is no longer separated from everywhere else. Now this, by the way, is in contrast. Remember what we learned in Kilayim. In Kilayim, let's say you've got a vineyard, and you put up a fence. Right? If you put up a fence on the side of the vineyard, then you can plant your wheat right up to the fence. Okay. Right. What happens if there's a gap in the fence?
If the gap is
so we have the same. So we have the same idea. If the gap is less than 10 tfachim, is less than 10 amas. You say, okay, so that's like an opening, and you can still plant over there, because it's just a fence with an opening, but there's still a clear partition between the vineyard and the wheat field, so that's still good. What happens if the opening is more than 10 amas?
Then it shouldn't be good then.
Right, so it's not good. So opposite the opening, definitely not. But what about opposite the parts where the fence is standing? So that actually, you said in Kilayim, is valid, because over there there's a partition between the wheat and the grapes. It's just that in this area there isn't a partition, so you can't plant there. So you see the difference between Eruvin and Kilayim. That Eruvin, the whole area needs to be separated out, because what you're trying to do is create a heter for carrying inside the entire area. With Kilayim, what you're trying to create is a heter for planting here, for planting here, for planting here. So if there's a break in the partition, then it's just this area here that you can't plant in front of. But in the other part of where the fence is still standing, there's no reason why you can't plant there, because your partition is still valid for that area.
I think we might have had this in Eruvin, but we talked about something being out in the field, and you need to set up like a corral or something for animals, and you need to set up something like that, to something, and we had a fence around, but also we had the same thing. You couldn't have more than something or less than something.
In Shvius, you're thinking about in Shvius, where he wanted to put his animals in the field, but he doesn't want to give the appearance of wanting to fertilize the field,
Okay.
right? So the way he could do it was by partitioning them off into a section of the field, so that the manure is not being spread all over the field. It's just in this particular area, because if you put your animals, what you're going to do? They're going to poop. So.
Right.
So you got to you have no choice, but it mustn't look like you're doing it in order to fertilize your field. Okay. Right, Mishna Tes. Makifin shlosha chavalim ze lemala mizeh v'zeh lemala mizeh. So you can take 3 ropes around your encampment, okay, and run them around the outside of your encampment. As long as you don't have 3 tvachim between. What's 3 tvachim? We know this from Sukkah.
Right. I was just going to say that. I was just right. You
Love it.
With the sukkah.
That applies not only to Sukkah, it applies to Eruvin as well. So if you've got these 3 ropes going up with a gap from the ground, less than 3 tvachim to the first rope, and then less than 3 tvachim to the second rope, and less than 3 tvachim to the third rope, right? You're going to then you can have that can be a valid partition for an Eruv. Okay. And the width of the 3 ropes put together must be more than a tefach. Okay, because you've got 3 gaps of air, makes 9 tvachim, and 3 ropes whose collective width must be at least a tefach. It must be more than a tefach because you're not allowed to have 3 tvachim in between them. So you've got to be 2.9 tvachim, let's say, in between each one.
And we have with Lovid, it's you can go up. I forget how much it is. Is it
3 tvachim?
Yeah, 3 tvachim, same thing.
3 tvachim. It's the same din. Exactly the same din in Sukkah. Okay, so less than 3 tvachim is considered as if it's not there; it's filled in.
Right.
Okay, so you can make your boundary partition for your Eruv out of lovewood as well, and that's perfectly valid. Okay. We'll see some more. There's some more interesting cases. It's a pity that it's going to be over Shabbos because it's an interesting discussion there. But we'll get to revise Mitzvah Hashem on Sunday.
I was telling my wife the other day that we have, everyone has these green fences all around their houses, like on Dula. Yeah. So I said, we don't even need to put up we don't have to put anything up. We have a fence we have a wall in the back, and we have a fence on the right, the left, and the front.
Yeah.
So you have your sukkah right there. I don't have to. She said, but what about privacy? I said, well, that's all right. That's a different story.
Okay, different story, yes.
That's
true.
You don't need anything.
Exactly right.
If there was a storm and your sukkah fell down, you're still okay. Because you still have what's there. So, if you have, right?
I mean, the skach is going to be on, obviously.
Right. You have to have a way to put the skach on. That's the only thing. That's if you just use those fences, you have to think of a way to make the skach hold up. So, Okay, we're in Shabbos.
Yeah. Kaf Aleph Beis.
Kaf. What did you say?
Kaf Aleph, yeah. Kaf Aleph, Mishna Beis.
Right. Okay. A stone, which is on the opening of a cask, one may tilt on its side so that it falls off. If it was among the other casks, one may lift it and then tilt it on its side so that it falls off. Money which is on a pillow, one may shake the pillow so that it falls off, and there was filth on it, he may wipe it off with a rag. If it was made of leather, he may pour water on it until it disappears. Beit Shammai says, Beit Shammai says we may pick up bones and husks from the table, but Beit Hillel says one must pick up the entire table board and shake it. One may remove from the table even crumbs less than the size of a gazayas, as well as the pods of chickpeas and the pods of lentils, because they are animal fodder. A sponge, which if it has a leather handle, we may wipe with it. If not, we may not wipe with it. The Chachamim, however, say in either case, it may be moved about on Shabbos and is not susceptible to tumor contamination. A cask which has been broken, we may save from it enough food for 3 meals, and one may say to others, come and save for yourselves. However, he may not soak it up with a sponge. We may not press fruits to extract juice from them, and even if they float out by themselves, they are prohibited. Rabbi Yehuda says if they were intended for food, the juice that flows from them is permitted, but if they were intended for juice, what flows from them is prohibited. Honeycombs, which one crushed from the Sabbath, and the honey that flowed out by itself are prohibited. Rabbi Elazar, however, permits them. Okay.
Of base.
Okay. Okay. Shabbos. Which Shabbos do you have? Which one?
Yeah, Vav base.
I'm sorry?
Vav base.
Okay, that's what I have. Okay. A man may not go out with a hobnailed sandal, which is nor with a single one, which when there is no wound on his foot, nor with a tefillin, nor with an amulet, when it is not from an expert, nor with a coat of mail, nor with a helmet, nor with greaves. But if he went out, he is not liable for a sin offering. A woman may not go out with a needle that has an eye, nor with a signet ring, nor with a coconut-shaped head ring, nor with a spice bundle, nor with a perfume flask. And if she went out, she's liable for a chatas. These are the words of Meir. But there could come an exemptor in the case of a spice bundle or a perfume flask. A man may not go out neither with a sword, nor with a bow, with a shield, nor with a buckle, what did I say, buckler, right? Nor with a spear. And if he went out, he is liable for a sin offering. Reb Eliezer says they are adornments for him, but the Chachamim say there is nothing but a disgrace, as is said, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. One nation shall not lift up a sword against another nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. A garter is not susceptible to tumor contamination, but we may go out with it on the Shabbos. Ankle chains are susceptible to tumor contamination, and they may not go out with them on Shabbos. We have Trumos.
Trumos, yeah. Ches Yud base.
I'm sorry?
Ches Yud base.
Base. Okay. Where am I here? What happened? Okay. I keep turning the page the wrong way. And so too, women who to whom non-Jews said, give us one of you, and we shall defile her. Otherwise, we shall defile all of you. Let all of them be defiled, but let them not hand over to them one Israelite soul. If one sowed truma, if in error he must plow it over, but if willfully he must let it grow. If he reach a third of its growth, whether in error or willfully, he must let it grow. In the case of flax, if willfully, he must plow it over. And it is liable to leket, shikacha and peah, and poor Israelites and poor priests may gather it, and the poor Israelites must sell theirs to the priest at the price of truma, and the money is theirs. Reb Tarfon says only poor priests should gather, for they may forget and put it in their mouths. And Reb Akiva said to him, if so, let only the ritually clean gather. Okay, we have mikvos. It should be
Ches Yud.
Good, Beis Yud. If a mikvah consists of 40 saw of water and mud, Reb Eliezer says one may immerse items in the water, but one may not immerse them in the mud. Reb Yeshua says in both the water and the mud. In what mud may one immerse? In mud over which the water flows. If, however, the water was on one side, Reb Yeshua agrees that one may immerse items in the water, but one may not immerse them in the mud. What type of mud were they speaking of? Mud into which a stick sinks on its own accord. So says Rav Meir. Reb Yehuda says a place where a measuring stick cannot stand. Abba Elazar ben Dolev says a place where a plumb bob sinks. Reb Elazar said such that falls through an opening of a barrel. Reb Shimon says such that enters the tube of a water skin. And Eliezer ben Sadik says such that is measured on a log. Reb Yossi says if there are two mikvos, neither of which contains 40 sor, and a log and a half of shuvin fell into one, and a log and a half of shuvin fell into the other, and then they became mixed, the waters are still valid because they were never designated as disqualified. But if there is a mikveh that does not contain 40 sor, and 3 lugums of shuvin fell into it, and then was divided into 2, the waters remain disqualified because they have already been designated as disqualified. Rabbi Yeshua declares them valid, for Rabbi Yeshua used to say, any mikveh not containing 40 saw, into which 3 lugim of shuvin fell, and then even 1 quarter was removed, the water is valid because it is short of 3 lugim of shuvin. But the Kachamim say it is forever in its disqualified state until the full amount of its original content flows out plus a little more. How so? A cistern in a courtyard into which 3 lugim of Shuvin fell is forever in its disqualified state until the full amount of its original contents flows out, plus a little more, or until he sets up the courtyard, a mikvah of 40 sor, and the upper waters become tahor by the lower ones. But Reb Eliezer ben Azariah declares it invalid unless it is closed up. A cistern is, that's it. Okay. Okay, we have Yud. No, we don't have Yud, rather.
In base Gimel.
If he severed the head with one stroke, it is invalid. If he was slaughtering and severed the head with one stroke, if the knife measures the width of one neck, it's valid. If he was slaughtering and severed 2 heads with one stroke, if the knife measures the width of one neck, it's valid. When does this ruling apply? Only when he made a forward stroke but not a backward stroke, or if he made a backward stroke but not a forward stroke. If he made a forward stroke and a backward stroke, however short it was, even if it was with a scalpel, it is valid. If a knife fell and slaughtered, even though it is slaughtered in the normal fashion, it is invalid. As it is stated, and you shall slaughter, and you shall eat. What you slaughter, you may eat if the knife fell and he picked it up, or if his clothes fell and he picked them up, or if he sharpened the knife and became fatigued and his companion came and slaughtered. If he paused as long as it takes to slaughter, it is invalid. Rabbi Shimon says if he paused as long as it takes to examine. I thought that had to be done
yeah?
Stroke. The shechita had to be done in one stroke.
No, the shechita does not have to be done in one stroke.
No? Oh, okay.
That's exactly what it's saying. Is that if he requires to do two strokes, that's also okay. But he can't pause in between. That's the thing. Is that if he stops the shechita in the middle, and there's enough of a gap to complete a shechita, according to Tanakama, then that's a possible thing. And Rabbi Shimon says, no, the shear is pausing enough that to check the knife, which the halacha follows the Tanakama.
So you can go forward and backward?
Forward and backward is fine, yes.
I didn't think so.
In Lamasse, they usually use knives that are big enough that you can do it in one stroke. You've got less chance of a psul if you're doing it in one stroke.
Have you ever gone to a shechita?
No. No.
We're in the same situation. No. No, that's not for me. But it's interesting though when you speak to older people, older than me certainly, and they talk about their mothers bringing the chicken home from the butcher and being out in the backyard and doing that thing. It must have some mental effect on some of these people. If she holds the knife and goes, "I told you, if you misbehave, this is." Oh, that's terrible. All right. If one severed the esophagus and tore the trachea, or he severed the trachea and tore the esophagus, or he severed one of them and waited until the animal died, or he thrust the knife under the second organ and cut it, yes, Hivav says it is a vela. Rabbi Kiva says it's a treifa. Rabbi Yishiv says a general rule in the name of Yeshua. Whatever became unfit through its slaughtering is nevela. Whatever is slaughtered properly, but something else causes it to become unfit, is treifa. And Rabbi Kiva admitted to him. If one slaughters an animal of beef,
that's an important thing just to absorb that. That the shechita, if the shechita itself was pasul, if he did something wrong, he severed, he cut the wrong thing, or paused, or there was a nick in the knife, or anything like that, the animal is a nevela and it's tameh. Right? It's tameh as a nevela. If the shechita was fine, if you did a perfectly good shechita, but they opened up the animal and found that it was that it had a wound or something like that, that's called a treifa. So a treifa is not kosher, but it's also not tameh.
If one slaughters an animal, a beast, or a bird, and no blood came out of them, they are kosher. And if they may be eaten with ritually contaminated hands, since they have not been made susceptible by blood. Reb Shimon says they have been made susceptible by the slaughtering.
Interesting. I think it's another one of these theoretical, hypothetical cases where, like, you shecht an animal and no blood came out.
I was thinking that, right?
I don't know if that could. I don't know if physically that could ever happen, but theoretically, if it had to happen, then that's what the argument is about. Is like, is it muhshar? Is it considered susceptible to tumah now, since there was no blood to be matameet?
Right.
And so the halacha follows the Tanakama that it's tahor.
Okay.
Unless you cook it or put it into water. But if you let's say you roast it, you barbecue it, then it would be insusceptible to tumah. Okay, next, Nazir.
Nazir. No.
Uh,
Uh,
yeah.
Three matters are forbidden to a Nazir: truma, head shaving, and products of the grapevine. There is an aspect of greater stringency to tuma and head shaving than to produce of the grapevine. In that, tuma and head shaving cause forfeiture, whereas the products of the grapevine do not cause forfeiture. There is an aspect of greater stringency to produce of the grapevine than to tuma and head shaving, in that there are no exceptions to the prohibition of the products of the grapevine, whereas there are exceptions to the prohibitions of tuma and head shaving.
So where are the exceptions to to head shaving and tuma?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what I'm saying.
What are the exceptions where a Nazir is permitted to shave his head, or he is permitted to become tameh?
Sorry, I don't remember.
Yeah, so a Mace Mitzvah. First of all, a Mace Mitzvah.
Right.
If there's a Nazir and he sees a Mace Mitzvah, then he has to bury the mace.
Right.
Okay, so he's allowed to become tameh. What about his head shaving? If he's got a long tumah, a long Naziris, then he's allowed to thin out his hair every 30 days, I think. Is that right? Let me just see what the mitzvahs are saying. And if he becomes tameh, if he becomes tameh by accident, then he also has to shave his hair. Okay, carry on.
Where a shaving is an obligation and where there is an abandoned corpse. And there is an aspect of greater stringency to tumah than to head shaving, in that tumah cases forfeiture of all the days previously observed, and one is obligated because of it to bring a sacrifice, whereas head shaving causes forfeiture of only 30 days, and one is not obligated because of it to bring a sacrifice. What is the procedure for head shaving? In Tuma, it would be sprinkled on the 3rd and the 7th days, shave his head on the 7th, and bring his sacrifices on the 8th. However, if he shaves on the 8th, he brings his sacrifices on the same day. That's Rabbi Akiva. Reb Tarfon said to him, "What is the difference between this one and a Metzorah?" He said to him, "This one's purification is dependent on his days, while a Metzorah purification depends on the shaving, and he cannot bring a sacrifice unless the sun has set on him."
Okay, yeah, the difference is that the Metzorah is himself personally tameh, and his Torah only comes about through the head shaving.
Right.
Okay. So that means, and before he can bring his korban, he has to go through Harev Shemesh. So he can't shave on the same day as he's bringing his korban. Technically, he just can't. Whereas the Nazir is not tameh. He's his head shaving is not dependent on his Torah is not dependent on the head shaving. It's dependent on him getting paraduma. Then he as a separate thing, he needs to shave his hair in order to bring it to come to the Beis Hamikdash. But that could be on the same day.
What is the procedure for head shaving in Tahara? He would bring 3 animals: a sin offering, a burnt offering, and a peace offering. Slaughter the peace offering and shave upon it. These are the words of Reb Yehuda. Reb Elazar says he does not shave his head except on the slaughter of a sin offering, because the sin offering takes precedence on every occasion. However, if he shaved his head on any of the 3, he has discharged his obligation. I just want to check something over here where it says upon it. So in this part where he's shaving upon the animal, he actually
upon having shechted the animal, then he can do his tiglachat. This is tiglachat atara. So because the hair his hair is actually going to be used to fuel the pot underneath the shlamim. So when they cook the shlamim, part of the fuel has to be his hair. Okay.
Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says,
we've done 3.
Is that 3? Okay.
Yep.
I know you want to go, but I have a quick question for you.
No.
You've been here much longer than I have. How long are you here? 20 years?
19.
19. So you lived, really? Oh, wow. Like 7 or 8 years left.